Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review and reaction for Succession Season 4, Episode 9. This episode is titled Church and State, and I'm a big fan of good titles. Like, the double meanings here are fantastic. The separation of church and state as like this big political tenet, and then they can't even separate the people working for the states from the actual church because Mencken is there, and it's all just what a disaster, weird, powerful episode this is.
Very powerful episode. I mean, for me, all the stuff that happened at the church with the funeral and Ewan speaking and everything that happened with Roman, it played out exactly like I said it was going to play out, which, I don't usually kind of get a W on this
There you
channel,
go, there
but
you go, there you go.
for those of you who don't know or are new to the channel, I'm a former funeral director, so I've seen some of this kind of happen before with people where Roman's in this type of situation where he's just like buried his feelings about everything that happened, and he's been in denial to the point that he thinks he can be Roman the showman. And I was expecting that it would go like this, that he would have a breakdown, he'd look over at the casket, or possibly if it was open casket, that he would see his dad and he would break. And oh boy, did he ever break.
What a disaster of an episode for Roman. Just any sort of like stability he had is just gone. I think okay,
Maybe.
I don't know. This is the
I'm
thing.
just glad he's not dead, because like at the end of this episode when he was running out into the street with everyone, I thought he was going to die.
Well, I did too for a second, if I'm being totally honest. And it's just here's the thing: I can also sit here and be like, Roman is done. He will never be in charge of anything ever again. But I feel like I've said that with like 3 or 4 characters this season already.
That's true.
Every single time, it's like nothing is ever stable, nothing is ever for sure, and we have so much to get into here. But before we go further, why not go ahead and check out our Patreon for an exclusive Succession discussion about who could be ending up on top, which is clearly a very active discussion even still after this episode.
Absolutely. And thank you to all our patrons who are already over there talking to us about
Yeah.
Succession and Blacklist and everything else that we are covering here at the channel. Okay, let's stay with Roman,
Yes.
because wow, was he ever on a ride. We saw him at the beginning of this episode. He was really confident. He was still off his big win of getting Mencken in office and everything that was happening with him. He thought he was going to go up there and just give a show, Roman the
Yeah.
showman. And then Ewan got up there and gave this incredible speech about his brother, about the good about him, about the bad about him, about stuff we didn't know that he had been like carrying with him, this idea that he was responsible for his sister's passing, like, and that, people were like sitting on top of that being like, yeah, you are, and that could have been sort of the first stepping stone to bring Logan to where he was. It was an incredible speech. I mean, Kendall's speech was good, but
Yeah.
his was like out of this world, 10 out of 10. And it really hit Roman really hard. And, you can only bottle things up for so long before you're going to need to be able to grieve. And that is the part of funerals. That's what they're there for. They're giving you a chance to say goodbye, to be able to grieve with your family, with your friends. And I understand that this had a lot of different moving parts to it. So the children all wanted to be strong because they're all fighting for that top brass. But, Roman specifically had no one and spoke to no one. I mean, Shiv had Tom kind of, but she also had private sessions where she just booked like a meeting by herself to grieve and cry, right? Like Roman didn't have any of that. It was going to come to this at some point. And the minute that he looked at that casket and was like, is he really in there? I was just beside myself. I felt so bad for him that denial had just like carried with him that strong.
There's so much to unpack from even just like this 5 or 6 minute segment in between you and Roman. And I think a lot of it just speaks to the strength of the writing where Roman was just so easily hateable last week. I mean, he did
Yes.
some of the most despicable things we have
Yes.
seen him do. I think a lot of us have tried to have this soft spot in our hearts for Roman, despite really everything that Roman has done.
Mhm.
And he crossed so many lines last week, but yet the writing this week, he says that one line that you just said, is he still in there? And it's just breaking and it's shattering. And I mean, Kieran played it so well and so vulnerable. And then you're adding that to, this is a real joy of Succession, is that you can take James Cromwell and just like pull him off the bench. Like, how much have we seen Ewan in like the
I
past two?
know.
He's barely there. But then Ewan is just like, put me in, coach. Or actually, I guess rather he's like, you don't get to say what I'm doing, coach. I'm going up here
Right?
regardless. And then the first thing he does is like send this huge dig at like everybody else in the family and just like guilt trips them into oblivion. But I think all of this was so, I think, well played and well placed into who these characters were, because Roman has always been painfully insecure and
Yes.
full of bluster. And not only is this grieving process that you talked about, but it's also the real idea of Roman has always talked the talk, but has he really ever been able to walk the walk, to be a real leader? This is why to me Roman has always been the Robin and not the Batman, is just that he can't be the face of the operation.
I think he still can. We're going to get to
Boy,
that.
oh boy.
But anyways, after Roman has his breakdown, we saw Kendall go up there and just embody Logan in a lot of ways, where he was just like, yes, my dad was like this, boorish, this, everything. But, this was how he felt he needed to be in a lot of situations. And we all sort of accepted that that's the way it needs to be. And we need people like that to kind of run the world and money. And that whole speech felt like Logan. And that's why when he came back and sat back down, you sort of had this shot of Ewan looking over at him like, uh-oh. Uh-oh. we have another Logan. Logan is passed, and now another one's just popped right back up.
It's okay. Here's Kindle. Kindle is a paper Logan, and by this I mean he looks great. You could look at it from afar and be like, awesome. But if you set him on fire with just like one corner of it, it just all goes. And that's where Kindle is in this episode, where he does give this, I think, really incredible speech. I think he
Mhm.
really does take on this idea of who the legend Logan is and kind of combines that with who the person Logan is. And he takes a lot of these elements and stirs it together. And I think this plus living plus, as bizarre as that is, that I still do not understand it, I think he has really built up this persona now that looks really good on paper, pun intended. But then I think the flames are going to come out. And it's as crazy as it seems, given that I think by far after this episode, you can make an argument that he is the most, well-placed, competent member of the Roy family. I can't get over the specter of the season 1 finale. I think that's coming back, and I think it's setting the world on fire in the finale. I just don't know how it's going to happen.
I just really enjoyed watching all the different players in the church
Yeah.
trying to still, play the game while people are there and they're grieving. I mean, there was a second there when I saw Carrie and I was like, oh, wow. And she's like, and I came with my lawyer because I think something's going to happen to me and I just want to have a minute to grieve. And it was interesting to see sort of the wife, the mistress, the ex-wife, the ex-mistress,
Yes.
all sitting together being like, listen, we have all been screwed over by Logan, but we all did love him and we're all going to come together right now. It was really touching to see that come together that way.
Can I give you my power rankings of the inner circle during this
Here
episode?
we go.
Number 1, Frank, not even close. Frank's conversation with Roman is top tier. Could I have had 2 more minutes of just him grunting at Roman while Roman tries this nonsense? Number 2, Hugo, partially because you're played by Fisher Stevens.
Love him.
You get awesome stuff with Kindle outside the church. Number 3, Jerry, you needed more to do. I'm sorry. You had a little bit of a moment where you had just a tiny bit of sympathy, I felt like, for Roman.
Yeah, no, she did.
Number 4, Carl. I'm sorry, Carl. You're not terrible. You're just not as good as everybody else. Let's just be honest here.
Okay, so let's talk also sort of about a little of the play that was going on in the church. So
Yeah.
we know that, the boys put Mencken in to kill the Gojo deal, and Shiv is like, okay, how can we make this happen? Okay, you can put in an American CEO, and I think then Mencken would kind of have to be like, well, I can't argue with that. That's fine, sort of thing. The biggest thing that I had been saying throughout all these videos is that the minute that people find out that Shiv is pregnant, that is going to be a thing that could potentially derail her. I hate saying it, and I've hated saying
I
it,
know.
but that's how this world is. She even kind of said it in her speech when she was also talking about her father, that being a woman in this world, incredibly difficult, very difficult to get anyone to hear her, see her, anything. Put on top of it that she's pregnant, and it's, she was even having this conversation with Matsson, who was like, oh, I hear you're pregnant. And she's just like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
36 hours later, I'll be right back at work. That she has to think that she has to be like that to be able to secure her spot, which is where it starts to get a little bit messy when we're getting closer to the end. So after this, we see everybody's trying to get Mencken's attention sort of at the after funeral gathering, sort of the wake, to, be like, hey, you want to, stop this from happening. No,
Yep.
no, I'll put in an American CEO. We could go that way. Mencken just didn't say anything really to anybody. I could not read him to save my life as he was going from person to person. I was like, this is kind of incredible how he's able to just be like, whoop, stonewall on everybody. So when we got that call at the end where we had Matsson say to Shiv, he's with us, he's going to do this, I was just like, okay. She was like, oh, okay, great. I'm like, it's not going to be you. He knows that you're pregnant. He's already made a comment about it. Mencken's already kind of been like, you don't like me. So I already kind of know how that's going to go. Here's my tinfoil hat,
All right.
guys. I know I'm being long-winded. Here's my tinfoil hat. It's Roman. And the reason that it's Roman is because he's friends with Matsson, and he's been friends with Matsson a long time. He was also friends with Mencken a while. He is close with both of these men. And even though he had this breakdown, I still think that they're going to put in someone that they trust, that they know that will do what they want.
It's the most realistic option, I think, of the three Roy people, because I think that Mencken's going to view Kendall as somebody he can't fully control.
Yes.
He can fully control Roman,
Yes.
seemingly. I think the question is Roman just too messy for Mencken at this point with everything that happened and everything that could happen? I think, your Shiv takes spot on. He's not going to put on there somebody who is pregnant. And just this, we all know the sort of person Mencken is.
Yes.
I think the reality of this situation,
And
at least
he can't trust her.
to me, it's just really a matter of, I hate to just steal this from the dead, but he knows you guys aren't serious people. He does not care about any of you. Here's what Mencken did. He used you. He manipulated you. He read Roman like nobody's business. He's a politician. He understands to be buddy-buddy with the guy who is tied to a burgeoning news empire is going to be good for him, who is susceptible to his own brand of venom. And now he's going to be president. And you people called it for him, even though there was still this issue going on in Wisconsin. So he has played all of you like a fiddle. He does not care. The only thing I think he really cares about with all of this is he can put some, American in charge of the company, satisfy people who are like up in arms over all of this, and then just move right on to the next thing. It's why, to me, I wouldn't be surprised if he just like pulls, I was about to say Jon Snow because it was the first name that came into my head, but not Jon Snow. Kit Harington's too good for this, but like some other Joe Schmo just like off the street who just, he's like known for a week in college or whatever, and is going to be like, guess what? You're in charge of this. And he, at this point, because he just doesn't care. And I don't think loyalty, whatever, I don't know how much of that's going to matter to him as much as it just is I'm just going to get this problem off my plate now because it's not a priority to me. Sorry, guys.
He's going to just want a puppet because he's going to want somebody in that position that is going to continue to give him good press throughout the entirety of his presidency. It's just the way that it is. Like, I don't think he doesn't care. I think he cares enough to put someone in place there that will continue to give him good press, but he doesn't have to worry about it. It'll just be a well-oiled machine that'll give him good press and go on and on. Him and Shiv don't like each other, so it's not going to be her. He can't control Kendall, like you said. He's been friends with Roman a long time. Ding, ding, ding. He's the person.
I think just to me, a lot of this at this point comes down to skeletons. And I think this is a big part of why I'm so grateful that the finale is 90 minutes long, because it's going to give us all of this sort of wiggle room where if Jerry sees something that she doesn't like, does that mean when she decides to play the Roman card, and basically it doesn't seem like it's going in that direction because she did seem fairly sympathetic to him in this episode, but it's still a skeleton. Kendall, being responsible for Guy's death at the end of season 1, that's still lingering out there. That's a card that somebody can play. Tom,
if they can prove it.
Yeah, that's going to be the hard part.
Logan buried it, so it's going to be hard.
Tom is a figurehead. He's going to be easy to sort of take out at any given moment. Hey, Connor.
Let's
get into Connor for a moment here.
You are not serious people.
No, I'm not. Okay, I am joking about, but hey, he's still trying to get the Slovenian thing. He's still trying to make that happen.
He is not interested in this company at all.
Okay. Can we get into Connor's corner, though, for a minute or two here? Okay. First of all, the biggest disappointment, and quite possibly my entire Succession life, is that we do not get Connor's speech during this episode, which I want to know what it was that Legal was going to have a problem with.
I was actually kind of surprised that he didn't speak. He's his first son.
Yeah. He's his first son. I kind of thought that he would have just had at one point the chutzpah to just be like, you know what? If Ewan's going to go up there and do this without anybody else being, I don't know, mostly because we don't really get inside of Connor's head enough to really have a good say in that one way or another.
Yeah.
I don't think obviously that Connor is going to be in charge of Waystar or anything like that. I do think
he's not interested.
He's going to have some sort of role to play still in the finale, I feel like. And I think the question to me that comes into that is, what is that going to be? Because this is the other big skeleton at the moment, is the votes in Wisconsin. I still don't think that this is fully done because it's just so messy and so tenuous. And this is where I think a lot of the fingers could be pointed at Roman or Kendall or Tom or anyone else there. And if you want to make a case that's like, okay, none of you people are fit to run any of this, this is going to be the thing that sinks you. It's an easy argument. I think that other networks hoping to take ATN down a peg, they can go out there and just sort of shout that on the airwaves.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting that we sort of saw this graph of who would really go down if it, it all came down, and that none of the kids were at the top of this.
No.
And they should be. I mean, they're running the company.
Okay. It's now time to hate on Cousin Greg for a minute here. And this has also been a nice tradition this season. It's that the thing is, I did enjoy Greg most of this episode, but he's just such an idiot. I'm sorry. It's his whole, I was very involved in the process. Greg, you walk down a hallway. Here are the two skills that you have shown that you're capable of doing this season. Reading, walking. Congratulations, Greg.
Okay, he had more of a role than that because he did tell that secret that ended up collapsing everything in Kendall pushing forward. However, I think with how serious this episode was with all sort of the moving parts, there's always a time and place for Greg. There are times where he's really funny and I really like him, or he does make a big shocking move in the last episode, and then there's times like this episode where he's just, I just want to meet the president. I want to meet the president. Can you make this happen? Hey, Mr. President. I'm just okay, I don't really care. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, Greg, but I just didn't care about this. You needed to meet him. For why? Well, what is it that you need from him? He's not going to be in your pocket. This isn't going anywhere. It almost felt kind of like of course they want Greg there. He's going to
Yeah.
be there. He's part of the family, but they just didn't exactly know what to do with him.
Yeah, I think it's just, what do we know about Greg? Okay, he leeches onto people. We'll just try to replicate the same thing here. And I would have taken a little bit of that Greg time and obviously given it to a Connor speech, but that's just me. But we'll get into now the moment we addressed at the very start of this video, which is just the complete unraveling of Roman at the very end of this episode. Because I mean, you said it, you thought he was gonna die.
The minute he was like, I'm gonna walk,
Yeah.
I was like, uh-oh, like this isn't good. They've clearly laid out that there's all this unrest and all these things that are happening right now. You can hear people down the street. There's huge groups of people, and he's like, I'm gonna walk. I was like, oh, uh-oh, he's gonna die. I thought he was gonna die.
It's a really, I think, kind of complicated thing to figure out what Roman's intentions were in that moment, because I don't think it's as simple as saying, okay, he wanted to unalive himself.
No,
I
I
think,
don't think so.
yeah, I don't think that's the case
I
either.
thought it was going to be like an accident. He's put himself at the wrong place at the wrong time, shouting the wrong things at the wrong group of people. Like I just thought it wasn't intentional. He was just mad and blowing off steam.
I think he wanted to feel on some level on the outside a little bit of the pain that he felt on the inside. And I think pain can manifest itself in so many different ways. Like,
Yes.
I think I think a part of him probably did want somebody to shove him or, get into some sort of altercation, because that's a way to blow off some element of steam.
Absolutely. Anger is one of the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah. And so I think he wanted that out of it. I think he wanted to just feel something, because I mean, he's been in this sort of spotlight for so long that he doesn't know how to handle anything now. And because he doesn't have Jerry anymore, which is, of course, of his own doing, but because he doesn't have that outlet, he doesn't have an outlet. He doesn't have anywhere to go to. He doesn't have anyone to talk with. He can't do it with Kindle. Instead of like having honest conversations, he's just like being purely disgusting with everybody on the way over. The guy just needs therapy. Like, that's the real solution here, but I don't know if he's ever going to get it.
No, I don't know that he will. I mean, we saw that Colin was trying to get therapy, and instead Kendall was like, I hear you're trying to get therapy. Come work for me instead. That, again, that whole, like, he's trying to be the next Logan, and he really was setting that up with that speech he gave at the church. I mean, even at the end of it, Mencken came up to him, shook his hand, and was like, good job kind of thing. I was like, oh, okay, that's not great. And then he's like, oh, Colin, you were my dad's sort of right-hand man. Now you're going to be mine. But then we saw at the very, very end with him with Hugo, where he was just like, you're going to be, if you want to be with me, you're going to be my dog. I'm not going to try to pretend that we're going to be partners or anything, but you'll be very rich. You'll be a very rich dog. Woof. I'm like, oof, Hugo.
Hugo. Speaking of dogs,
What a great character.
Where's Mondale, by the way? Shiv's dog that was just like in the dark at the start of the season. Wasn't at the party. Nothing. Okay, anyway, I could talk about Mondale forever. But like here's the biggest question. And I mean, you guys in the comments can answer it as well. It's just like, out of everybody there who was at Logan's funeral, who really loved him? Like, who genuinely cared about him on a personal level more than anybody else? Like, I think we might actually have the same answer here, is that I think it's Roman. I think he really wants his dad's approval, and he never really got it in the way he wanted.
I think they all wanted his approval. I think the thing with Roman was just that he had been holding on to his grief and in denial. I mean, when we first saw Logan die, he was still in denial, like, 40 minutes later, when everyone was like, no, this is really happening. No, you don't know. And that it didn't hit him as reality until he looked over and saw the casket and was like, is he really in there? Like, is this actually happening? That for all these days, he was still living in this denial that his dad was still out there. I think they all cared and they were all hurting that he was gone. But like, the person that seemed to be like the most broken up besides Roman, who again was holding on to grief for many, many days and hadn't let anything out, was Carrie. Like, bawling her eyes out. Like, I didn't expect that, honestly. Like, I thought she was just with him for the money, with
Yeah.
him for the power, whatever. Watching her bawl her eyes out like that, I was like, wow, there was really something there for you.
I guess that would be kind of the irony that the person who did actually care about Logan the most is the person most worried that the family is going to keep her away for a wide array of different reasons.
Yes.
But it's an interesting thing to talk about, and I think this episode is really magnificent. I only Succession can get away with this. I will just put it that way. I don't know of a lot of other shows that could just do 5-minute eulogies and people are going to be engaged, excited, not bored. Like, this is such a huge risk.
Also, good for you, Logan, for getting that crypt for $5 million. That is a steal. That is 10 million more. $5 million? How did that happen?
I don't have any idea, but I'm glad that it at least gave us another fantastic Connor scene where he also talked about considering cryogenics or save a top bunk for me. Connor, I want to say what's wrong with you, but what's wrong with all you people? That's the takeaway from
Oh,
this.
Connor, man, I'm going to really miss this show. One episode left.
Okay, all right. Well,
one.
We're going to be in our feelings the rest of the night, but thank you guys for watching. Check out our Patreon in the description.
And thank you to all our Patreons.
Yeah, thank you guys very much, and we'll see you here next time.